Hello no kako. This is Kenson again, coming to you from the beautiful island of Maui. Well, today we're going to study, as you can see from the title, the opening of the seven seals. And this will just be part one. If you're familiar with my studies, you know that I'm very interested in two subjects. One is Christian growth and discipleship. And then the other subject I've been really getting into is prophecy. And especially today, and I've been a Christian over 40 years, but just in the last 5, maybe 10 years, it's as if God has begun to unseal these hidden elements in prophecy, because for most of those 40 years, as I studied the scripture, the elements have all been the same. But now in these last 5, 10 years, things have been changing, as you're probably familiar, and that God is showing us many new things in terms of prophecy that pertain to our time and our age. Well, we're going to look at this study on opening of the seven seals. These seals, of course, are enclosing this scroll. I mean, I know the many Bibles call it a book, but in these days when John was, of course, receiving this revelation, they didn't have books that we know of, with two hardcovers and a spine and pages, maybe even numbering in the hundreds. That thing was invented later on when they had the printing press, or maybe even before the printing press. But in the days of John, in the first century, they had scrolls, and they would seal them like this to keep them secure. And so in the book of Revelation chapter 6, John begins to see the Lamb of God, Jesus, begin to open these seals, and the focus is all on these seals, and we're going to be looking at the seals, of course. But have you ever asked yourself, what are they sealing? What is this scroll? I mean, what's written on this scroll, both on the inside and the out? And so I have an opinion on that. The prevalent opinion is that this scroll represents the title deed of the earth, and that Jesus is opening it because now the deed is transferring from Satan to him. And that's a good interpretation, but I have a different take on it, and I'd like to review that to you at the end of part 2. I'm going to share with you my opinion on what this scroll is. But let's begin here. From the beginning here is Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. And there John says, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder." And of course, you're probably familiar that the first 4 seals are these first 4 horses of the apocalypse. And so I wonder if what he heard was not the noise of thunder as in lightning and thunder, but the thunder of the hooves of these horses. And as we're going to see that these 4 horses are different colors: white, red, black, and oftentimes scripture says pale. But this horse in the Greek, the word is chloros, and this word chloros is where we get our English word chlorine, and the chlorine gas is often illustrated as being green, and but actually it's invisible, but it always seems to be green. So this horse actually would be a green horse. Okay? So let's begin with the white horse and look at who the possibility is of who this horse is, and the rider as well. Well, here it is. Revelation 6:2, "And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering, and to conquer." Of course, you see here in this picture, you can see who I'm alluding this horse to, and it is the founder of the Islamic faith, and that, of course, is Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. And you can see here this symbol that Islam has taken upon, and that is the crescent moon and the star, and this almost looks like a bowl and a crown right here. In fact, this symbol didn't begin with Islam, but it actually began with the Sumerian religions, which was centuries before Islam ever came on the scene. And in fact, this symbol right here, if you flip this crescent horizontally and then the crown on top, that was this was actually a crown right here, and it was worn by a Sumerian goddess, and it was also worn by the Egyptian goddess Isis, as well as the Roman and Greek goddess Diana or Artemis, as she was also known. So this actually was a crown, the bow and the star, and the Islamic faith has taken this symbol, and they've taken it for themselves as well. And what makes me think that this is Muhammad instead of Jesus, as many interpreters would say, and I can see why they would say it's Jesus, because Jesus does appear on a white horse in chapter 19. But according to this verse, it says, this rider went forth conquering and to conquer. By the way, this word conquering and conquer in the Greek is the word of a very famous shoe company, athletic shoe company. Of course, it's the word Nike, where we get the word Nike from. And that is to be a victorious and a conqueror in athletics. And that's where this word comes from. But anyway, this rider goes out conquering and to conquer. And it doesn't seem to fit the person of Christ. Because when he sends us out, he doesn't send us out to conquer and to conquer, but he sends us out to preach the gospel of salvation and even to give our lives in this endeavor. But he doesn't send us out to conquer nations. He sends us out to win them to himself and to make them disciples or followers of Christ. People would say, well, how do I know it's Muhammad? Well, I don't really know for sure it's Muhammad. But as I share some of these other symbols and these other writers, I think it becomes clearer, especially as you look at the history of the Christian church in the last 2,000 years, that it becomes more relevant that this is Muhammad. Because when Muhammad came, he did come conquering and to conquer. At first, he came to share his the revelation that he received from an angel that he wrote down that became the Quran. But when he began to face opposition, he pulled out his sword, and he began to conquer people, and it was either convert or die. And so I believe that's the spirit of these four horses. And so let's go on to the next horse. This horse is the red horse. In verses 3 and 4, it says, and when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. This word great is the word mega. And sword, this word sword oftentimes describes a sword like this, a foreign sword or a curved sword. And this, of course, is the kind of sword that the disciples of Muhammad went out conquering the nations around them, or the tribes around them. Now, Muhammad, of course, came in about the 7th century, and then for the next 14 centuries, even onto our time, and it's going on even today, they went out to take peace from the earth. And of course, they did kill people. Jesus doesn't send us out to kill people, but the followers of Muhammad and of Allah go out and they do kill people in spreading their faith. Okay, and they are given a great sword. I want to show you something right here. And this picture right here, this map, shows the Grand Holy Roman Empire. This is the combined empires of the Roman side, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Byzantine Empire at its height. This is how far the gospel had reached and Christendom had reached. And that's why we have the Russian Orthodox Church, and then the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Eastern Orthodox Church. It's all these churches, and the Coptic Church. And so Christendom had spread all through the northern part of Africa, down into Sudan and Ethiopia, and even you can see here into the Arabian Peninsula, and up into, this is called Turkey, but Asia Minor, and many a lot of this through the efforts of Paul and the apostles, but the Christians after them went on, into the 6th and even 7th century, spreading the gospel to all of these parts. And actually, they should shade in India, because Thomas had gone to India and began to preach the gospel there. But you see how far the gospel had gone. Now, something happened after Islam came on the scene. And I'm going to show you a video, but this is a still picture taken from the video. And it shows the battles of the Muslims against the Christian empire. And let me just play this video for you, and it explains it better than I can.
And here it starts. Islam burst out of the Arabian Peninsula and immediately starts attacking the Middle East. And notice that it doesn't take long until they're crossing the Mediterranean and attacking southern France and Spain.
All of the red dots are battles.
Most people think of
battles that
Islam, they think of Arabs,
Islam has
they think of Arabs, they think of desert. And yet here we see that Islam is projecting power throughout the Mediterranean. Notice how the little islands of the Mediterranean are getting hammered. The navy of Islam would attack coastal towns, kill, rob, rape, and then take slaves. So this whole battle map, as it unfolds, you're seeing slaves being taken. Over 1 million slaves were taken out of Europe into the Islamic world. That's something you don't think about much, but it's absolutely true. There were over 200 battles fought in Spain alone. And we also see, however, on the east coast in Turkey, that Islam is trying to break into Europe. Now, what's going to happen is, in Spain, this ongoing fight that lasted for 400 years, is the Christians are going to push back the Muslims. But now then, what has happened over in the east is that Constantinople has fallen, and now then Eastern Europe is getting hammered. The jihad now comes to Eastern Europe.
It's
pushed out now of Spain. Northern Africa is now completely Islamic. The Middle East is completely Islamic. This is all jihad, relentless jihad. And why is it so relentless? Well, Muhammad was relentless in his jihad. And these people are good students of Islam, and so it's against the kafir, on and on. It was traditional that when the Sultan came to power, the brand new Sultan, he would immediately try to launch new wars, because he was going to be noted in his Islamic history as to how well he fought against the kafir. So that's what the jihad looked like over that time period, 548 battles. But remember, when you bring up jihad, people want to bring up the Crusades. So I also prepared a dynamic battle map of all the offensive raids of the Crusaders. Let's watch it and make a comparison. And so it begins. The Crusades enter into Turkey and the Middle East. Battles go on, but aren't there far fewer than you thought there might be? And here we go. The last battles are fought, and that is the end of the Crusades. So now then we can talk about some facts. Yes, there were Crusades, but notice they ended centuries ago, and jihad is being practiced today. Jihad has been with us for 1,400 years. There is no comparison between jihad and the Crusades, certainly not a moral comparison. And when you're looking at the Crusades, remember, in one sense, all of the Crusades were defensive wars. Why? Well, as we saw in the first jihad map, it was Islam that came out of Arabia and conquered the Middle East, a Christian Middle East. And so the Crusaders were trying to free their Christian brothers and sisters from jihad. So there's no moral comparison at all. The motivation of the Crusaders was to free Christians. The purpose of jihad is to enslave the kafir. So the next time you hear somebody talk about, oh, those dreadful crusades, you've seen some facts about the matter. Why don't you pipe up and tell them you don't really know the matter?
This is a presentation by Dr. Bill Warner. He's actually, I believe he's a physicist. His specialty is actually quantum mechanics, but he has done a study on Islam, and you need to watch his videos, Bill Warner. Just Google him or look him up on YouTube, and it's quite incredible what he's done. There are other people right now coming up with similar videos on Islam that are explaining and educating us, because frankly I didn't know much about this kind of stuff, and I think it's very enlightening, especially as we look at prophecy. But I wanted to share with you this study on what he was saying about how Islam from the 7th century on began to conquer and conquering as it went. And as you can see, Spain was totally covered in even southern France. The Moors had come here, and these are all coming from different directions. Here it was coming from North Africa until 1492, when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, as you're familiar with, who sponsored Columbus's voyage to the Indies, as they thought, but they began to fight back against the Muslims and push them out. That's why today Spain is Catholic instead of Muslim. But you can see that Islam had spread all through southern Europe, and that's why you have places like Bosnia that are Muslim, but they were stopped right here in Austria at the Battle of Vienna in 1683. I'm going to give you the date of this battle later on because it is very significant. They were stopped here, and the Austrian Habsburg dynasty, as well as the Polish king, Jan Sobieski, pushed the Muslims back, and they actually defeated them decisively, such that the Ottoman Empire never really recovered, and they never threatened Europe again after that battle. But they were pushed back. But the Muslims, of course, controlled all of this area, as you can see. Now remember this map right here. This is where the Christians dominated, after several hundred years of missionary work, and they began to spread the gospel. But this is what has happened today because of Islam. Okay, look at this red map. This red map looks like the one I just showed you, but this red map actually shows the extent to which Islam has spread. And it looks just like the previous map, but it's not. This now represents Muslim nations, and it went far east as India and Malaysia, okay, and Indonesia. Okay? And so these were all conquered by battles. And as the speaker was saying, that Islam had initiated at least 548 battles. That's in this area of the world. He didn't count the ones that are here. 548 battles just here, not including these. Whereas the crusade, the total number of battles that the crusaders initiated were just 15, I believe. And that was just centered in this area. And it was, again, initiated because of Islam's push into Europe. So they were fighting a defensive battle with the Crusades. And this is something that I had never heard about, But you have to remember, this area right here used to be classical Greece, and there used to be the Roman Empire, and then it became Christianized, and now it's all controlled by Islam. Okay? And so Islam did go out to conquer, and conquering, as that red horse showed. And the question you might be asking is, what's happening today? Well, you can see that in Europe today, that the Muslims have a different strategy, not of actual fighting, but their strategy now is immigration. That they're flooding the European nations with Muslim immigrants, and now the Europeans are beginning to realize that they have a problem on their hands. In fact, in England, some people call Londonstan, because there are so many Muslims there. In Sweden, you hear of stories where Swedish people cannot go to certain places. It's a no-go place because the Muslims do not allow them to venture into those areas. And Europe has become a battleground by way of immigration. And you might be asking, well, what about America? We haven't reached that point yet. Yes, but what happened in America is a different strategy, I believe. In 2008, this a young man. His name is Barack Obama, accepted the nomination of his party to be their nominee for the presidential election. And he did so at this rally in the Denver Broncos Stadium, which is where this picture is taken. And he had this very interesting backdrop for the stage. And many people were confused, or they were just, thought, what is this thing? These Greek columns and things. Well, it turns out that this is a facsimile of the temple of Zeus from Pergamum. Pergamum is a city in Asia Minor that you're familiar with if you've read through the book of Revelation, because Pergamum is the city where Jesus Christ says that the seat of Satan resides in Pergamum. And he was referring to the temple of Zeus that was in Pergamum. This backdrop is actually a facsimile of that temple, the temple of Zeus. Jesus called the temple of, or the seat of Satan. You can see here the stairs in the front, and these two things seem to be the armrests of the chair, and this is the backrest of the chair. And so I'm not sure why Barack Obama used this as his stage for his acceptance speech, but it might be very symbolic. And the other thing that was interesting is at this stadium, because it's Bronco Stadium, the football team's mascot is this white stallion, the Bronco, that is rearing up on its hind legs. And so as the candidate Barack Obama accepted their nomination, it was an ominous thing, because here up above the stadium was this lit image of the white horse. And so some people actually think Barack Obama is the rider on the white horse, but perhaps he was simply alluding to the white rider, which, as I said, is Muhammad. But what is more specific here is in 2012, our president, Barack Obama, spoke to the United Nations, and he made this interesting statement, that the future must not belong to those who insult the Prophet of Islam. Now, coming from the President of the United States, it is a very telling statement, because most people would have said America is a Christian nation, but here Barack Obama is kind of changing that. And he did promise to change America as we know it. And so in a way, he's turning us into a pro-Islam nation. And as you can see by some of his actions. Now, what's happening here? Again, we go back to this map. And as I showed you in the previous map that looked similar to this area was all red. And this area was basically what you would have called the Roman Empire. Okay? And it has now become partially the Holy Roman Empire, as it was known back then. And then the other part is this, the Muslim Empire. This would be the Byzantine area. Okay? And it reminds me of this image right here. This is the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of. This is found in Daniel chapter 2. And you remember that story. He had a dream. He told his wise men, to interpret the dream. The wise men say, well, king, tell us the dream and we'll interpret it for you. And he says, no, I'm not going to tell you the dream. You tell me my dream and the interpretation of it. And they begin to panic, of course, because they say, nobody can tell you your dream. And so they begin to panic. But fortunate for them, there was someone among their company, and that person, of course, was Daniel, as well as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were part. And so Daniel tells his three companions, pray and ask God to reveal to us his dream. And God does reveal the dream, and Daniel goes before King Nebuchadnezzar, and he tells him that he had dreamt of this magnificent sight of this statue, head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of clay and iron. And of course, the common interpretation, and I believe this interpretation is true, is that the head represents the Babylonian Empire, because Daniel told told Nebuchadnezzar that he was the head of gold. And then after this, we know from history that the Medo-Persian Empire arose. You know the story of Belshazzar and the disembodied hand that wrote on the wall. Okay? and brought in the Medo-Persian Empire. And then after this came about, we come to the Bronze Empire, which is the Greek Empire, and this is begun by a young man named Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedonia, and he defeats the Persian Empire, and so the area is transferred to the Greek Empire, and the Greek Empire falls, and what takes their place is the Roman Empire, led by the Caesars, Julius Caesar, as well as at this time would be the Caesar Augustus, and so the Romans take over. Basically, they pick up where the Greeks left off, and they even maintain the Greek language, and they continue the empire. This empire lasts for many, many centuries until we come to the end times. And the question has always been, what is this empire? Well, this gives us a clue, because this is a mixture. The feet are a mixture of iron and clay. Well, the iron we see here. It is a mixture of the Roman Empire and another empire. And the question has always been, what is this empire? And if you go back to this map again, you see what it is. The Roman Empire covered this entire area. Okay? But now you see there are two parts of it. Here's the iron. This part's still loyal to Rome, the Roman Empire. When I say Rome, I'm talking about the Pope and the Vatican. And in a way, that's how this area came about. But the eastern side is now Muslim. Okay? And this would be the clay. This would be the iron, and this would be the clay. So now you have this empire that is, basically two parts, the iron and the clay, and they don't mix. And there are many people in the West who believe that we can mix them. So they, of course, they bring in the migrants, the Muslim migrants, to come into their countries, and we're doing it here in America as well. But we're beginning to see that it doesn't really mix, because these two cultures, the Western European culture and then the Islamic culture, are based upon two very different mindsets. The Islamic culture is based upon the Quran and Sharia law, whereas the Western culture is based on democracy and the Judeo-Christian culture. This is how this one arose. And they don't mix, because there's two allegiances here. Okay? In fact, we're going to see it later on when I show you a slide of a later horse that's happening. But we're going to move on, and we're going to look at this next horse, which is the black horse. And here we come to Revelation 6, 5, and 6. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." This, as most interpreters would say, has to do with economic power or trading. And you will know that in Islam, in the Muslim Empire, trade was a big part. And you can see this map right here, how the Muslims spread throughout Europe, Southern Europe, and Asia, and Africa on these trade routes. And as they went, they conquered and they converted people either by persuasion or by force. You're familiar with, of course, with the camel caravans, as well as the dhows. That they would use their dhows to travel along the coast, and they would trade all the way to China and Indonesia and Malaysia and India and through here. Okay, and so the Muslims were great traders. I mean, they were masterful at that. And so this black horse really represents them well, and they did very, very well, not only in trading, but in conquering. I find something really interesting here, and it says in the last part of this passage, "See thou hurt not the oil and the wine." Okay, the oil, I believe, is referring literally to olive oil, and the wine, of course, is the wine from grapes. But these are also symbolic as well. because the olive oil is used for lamps, that you would use it for lamps. In fact, the Jews would use it to light the menorah in the temple, a very pure olive oil. Okay? And, and today, what do we use? Not olive oil, but we use petroleum oil. And where are a lot of the petroleum found? Well, it's found right here in the Middle East. These green and red dots represent oil and gas wells. And you see them all over this Middle Eastern area. Okay? And even as far here into Egypt. But even here, all in the Muslim areas, in Turkmenistan, Pakistan, and moving towards in Asia. But primarily here in the Middle East, where Islam finds its center. Okay? But this oil has made the Middle East an area to be reckoned with because they control the best oil on the planet. I know we're finding oil in other places on the earth, but those places are difficult to get the oil. And in fact, the oil that are found in North America or in the Arctic Ocean, in the northern European areas, are difficult to refine. This oil that they're pulling up from the sands of the desert is very good, and it's cheaper to refine. So that today, even in the news you're reading, that they're selling this oil for very cheap. It was at a high of 100, now it's around 50. It had gone down even below that. But the Islamic countries are using this oil in a way as a power play to try to eliminate the oil that is coming from the North America and from Europe and even from Russia. They're trying to undermine that market. And so they're using this black horse right here in a way as a way to battle back and to exert their power. And this word here, the wine, later on in the book of Revelation, we hear about the Babylon the Great and how the nations of the earth came to her and drank of her wine and was drunk with her wine. And I know a lot of people are saying it's America, but the more we're beginning to look at it, it seems he's talking about this area of Arabia. He's talking about this city right here, Mecca, which is on the coast of the Red Sea. And people come here to get their oil. And the oil, this cheap oil, has made the nations drunk with this wine that the Middle East has been putting out. Here's another interesting thing about Islam. And this one right here is debatable, and people are debating the relevance of this. It's been always a question through the ages, and I think it's from the very beginning when the book of Revelation came out. What is this 666, the 666 number? And then you read about that in Revelation, I believe it's chapter 14. But Walid Shuabat, who is a converted Christian from Islam, and as he says in his biography, that he was a terrorist with the PLO before he finally saw the truth of the gospel. But he says that when he read the Greek text, and this is how the number 666 appears in Revelation chapter 14. Well, 14, or I think is the latter part of 13, at the very end of 13. It is these three Greek letters, this chi and xi and sigma. These three letters in the Greek language represent 660 and 666. But he said when he saw this, because he knew Arabic, he said this isn't Greek. He says this is actually symbolic of this thing right here. This is a very popular Arabic phrase, which is this phrase, Bismillah. And this phrase means, in the name of Allah. You read it from right to left. In the name of Allah. This symbol right here is their symbol for Allah. The X right here is not a letter at all. It's actually the crossed swords. And you see this symbol, you can see it on people's headband, as you see it here. Or they even wear it as an armband right here. And so Wali Shuibat said, what he believes this represents is Islam. And he says it is a common practice for Muslims to wear headbands with this symbol on it, in the name of Allah. And you will see it here. And again, like I said, you see it as armbands. And he makes the argument that this represents the power of Islam, and they're going to force everyone to wear this band, have a mark on their head, the forehead, and upon, I know the Bible says upon the back of the right hand, but he says the word there in the Greek can represent anything, from the upper arm to the hand. And so he says, and you're probably familiar, that this is what it's talking about, that this is the name of the beast. It is Bismillah, in the name of Allah. Okay? And so that's an interesting interpretation, and I think there's some validity to that. But it fits in hand with this black horse that Islam will control economically this area, and it will come to a time when the only way you can buy and sell if you live in this area is if you are a convert to Islam, and they will know that by the headband or the armband that you're going to have to wear with the 666 Bismillah phrase, Arabic phrase, in the name of Allah. Okay? Now let's go on to the fourth horse. This is the green horse, and this is what we read. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. Again, like I said, the Greek word is chloros, meaning green horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Okay? This horse right here, the green one, brings death and basically war to this area of the world where this horse is released. And here we're looking at this horse right here. Now, throughout the history of Islam, from the 7th century even to the present day, as I showed you with the maps, it has been in battle with the Christians and the Jews. And we saw that in the maps of the battles. But something happened on this day that this picture symbolizes. And of course, you all know what this picture is. It is symbolizing the events of 9/11. The year is 2001, 2001. Remember, I talked about this map right here, talking about the battles of the Muslims as they push their way into Europe. And I told you this is the Battle of Vienna, where the Habsburgs and the Polish army stopped the advance of the Ottoman army, and they pushed them back. This battle again was fought in the year 1683, and the date of this battle was September 11th, 1683. September 11th. The people of Islam are very aware of dates and of symbolisms, and that's why this event was done on 9/11, 2001, because this is basically saying they're saying game on. They had a brief respite from that Battle of Vienna, where their advance was halted. But what they're saying here on this day is telling us symbolically that the battle is back on, and we are going to continue our struggle now to conquer the rest of the world. Okay? And so that's why this occurred on 9/11. Now, a phrase here that I find very interesting is to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death. This sword again is talking about a large sword, and with the beasts of the earth. At first I thought maybe this means like the sharks. Here in Hawaii, we have occasionally, not all the time, but occasionally we have people that go swimming in our beautiful oceans around the islands, and they get attacked by sharks. And some of them do die. And so I thought maybe that's what this refers to, or maybe bear attacks or lions, etc. But this word beast talks about animals, but it is also a metaphor for men or mankind when we act like beasts, and we can kill one another as beasts of the earth. And so I show you this picture right here. This, of course, you're probably familiar if you're keeping up with the current news, are the soldiers of ISIS, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, shooting right here. These are the soldiers of Iraq. They were captured and then they just shot them right here, just point blank. And they have, of course, done other incredible, things that people cannot believe it's happening in our modern world. I mean, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. We thought we were done with this after Hitler, but this kind of slaughter is coming back. And what's happening in ISIS is jihad, basically, is this word right here. The word jihad doesn't necessarily mean armed struggle. It means struggle. But it has come to mean armed struggle. And here you see the soldiers of ISIS. They have their banner. This banner actually, believe it or not, is a copy of the ones that Muhammad himself would fly when he went into battle. And it has this phrase. This phrase on the top is the first part of their, basically the profession of faith, we would call it. Their the shahada, meaning their profession of faith is the thing that you need to say to become, in order to become Muslim. And what this part of the phrase is there is no God but Allah. And again, you see this word here, Allah, repeated. There is no God but Allah. And the phrase continues, and Muhammad is his messenger. If you can profess that and believe it, then you are a Muslim. And this is another reason why you're going to always have this antagonism between Islam and, let's say, the Jewish faith, because the Jews also have a profession of faith, and their profession comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4, and you're probably familiar with that profession. And there we read, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one," or that phrase actually could say, "the Lord alone." The word Lord is the English translation, or basically symbol, for the Hebrew word. It's a tetragrammaton, the Yod He Vav He, the four letters that we translate often Jehovah or Yehovah or Yahweh. Okay, and so the personal name of God. So basically, what the writer of Deuteronomy, Moses, was saying is, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh alone." Okay? And so you have these two contrasting professions. There is no God but Allah, and the Jews, there is no God but Yahweh, and He is our God alone. Okay? And so that's where you see this. This is going to go on till the end of the world, that we're going to have this animosity between the faith of Islam and the faith of the Jews. Okay? And that would be the jihad. Of course, if you know, if you keep up with these events, you know that Islam will not be satisfied until the Jews are all removed from the land. Okay? Now, another part of this verse here of the green horse is that that they will have death, and it says they will kill with sword. We've dealt with that, and with hunger and with death. Okay, this is a picture right here, fairly recent, of what's happening in Syria with this civil war that's going on in the country. You can see the city behind them is in ruins. It's either the city of Homs or Aleppo. I'm not sure which one it is. But these people are the former inhabitants of the city, and basically they're starving. And the reason they're all here, jammed on this devastated street, is the relief agencies have come with food, and they're lining up to receive that food. These people are hungry, And so you can see this as a fulfillment of the green horse. And people are dying, especially the elderly and the very young, and the babies are dying. And these people, Syria, which had about 20 million people before this war started, now about half of them are displaced. And they have gone to the nations around Syria into these large refugee camps. And here's one that is in the northern part of Jordan. And this picture doesn't even shows the entire breadth of it. But there are literally thousands upon thousands of refugees at this camp, and there are several other camps like this around the nation of Israel, of Syria, where these people are going to try to get food and shelter and to survive. Now, you know that in this area of the world, it gets really hot in the summer, and in the winter, it gets very cold. And so these people are really struggling, and that green horse is happening right here, okay? Right here. Now, we go on to the fifth seal. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. He's talking about the believers, okay? The believers who are killed, and we often call this fifth seal is the seal of martyrdom. This picture here is also a fairly current picture, is when the soldiers of ISIS took these Egyptian Coptic Christians to the seashore, and then they executed all of them by cutting their heads off. And this is the removal of the fifth seal. This has been going on from the very beginning, from the 7th century, when the white horse rode out to conquer and conquering, and the red horse took away peace from the earth, and then the black horse controlling the world with economics, and the green horse spreading death and famine, and the beasts of the field. To do something like this, you have to be pretty, I mean, this is about as bad as you can become as a person, that you can actually cut the head off a person who is still alive. Okay? And this would be death by the beasts of the earth. Okay? And so this is what's happening. And there are other pictures I could have put on, but I just couldn't do it because it was too difficult. And I'm gonna show you something. If you Google this, ISIS atrocities against Christians, if you Google this, you can come and push on the images. You will see pictures that'll just break your heart, that are very difficult to look at, especially of the children and the babies who are killed in this civil war that's going on by these ISIS soldiers. And it is, I cannot even look at those pictures. It's so horrible. And this is the only one that I would show right here on this presentation. But if you really want to see how these people have become like the beasts, you need to look at these pictures. And the question you need to ask is, what is causing them to launch this jihad? What is causing them to do that, to act like that? And the answer is that their religion actually demands it. If you read the Quran, and I know the passages about more tolerance in the Quran, but these passages are superseded, and they're actually abrogated, or they're actually replaced by the newer passages from the section of the Quran that Muhammad wrote when he was in Medina, and these call for the death of the infidels. And so that's why these soldiers, these are the passages that these soldiers hold to. And then the other thing about jihad, in Islam, if you want to guarantee your place in paradise, okay, there's only one way to do it. Even if you follow the 5 pillars of Islam and you prayed 5 times a day, you went to the Hajj, and you walked around the Kaaba, and you gave alms to the poor, and you did everything that is required of you, that still did not guarantee you a place in paradise. Allah could still prevent you from getting into paradise. There was no guarantee except one way, and that is if you die in jihad, if you die performing jihad, fighting in jihad. If you die in jihad, now you are guaranteed to enter paradise. That is the one way to guarantee your salvation. In Christianity, I've helped many Christians how to be sure that they're Christians. You don't have to kill anybody. You don't have to die in battle. It is your faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ that guarantees your salvation in Christianity. But in Islam, it is to die in battle. which guarantees it. And that is why they are committed even to blow themselves up, to sacrifice their life, because in that death, they're guaranteed to enter heaven. The last time we saw something like this was during World War II, when the Japanese would do their kamikaze attacks on the Allied ships, as well as their banzai charges against the Marines, on these islands as they went from island to island, because the Japanese were committed to their emperor. And banzai, the word banzai in Japanese doesn't mean praise the emperor, it doesn't mean anything like that. It means 10,000 years. And it is equivalent to the English, especially the people in England who yell out, "Long live the Queen," or "Long live the King." It's equivalent to that phrase. And so when they say banzai, they were saying, "Long live the emperor," okay, symbolically. And they would die for the emperor. That's why when General MacArthur finally came and occupied Japan, the first thing he did was he forced the emperor to vacate that position as a god. Well, the Islam has a similar idea where they're fighting for their prophet, Muhammad, as well as dying for their God, Allah. And in dying for him in jihad, they guarantee their place in paradise. Well, you're saying, well, I'm still not convinced that these seals represent Islam. And I know I'm not going to convince anybody, unless God shows that to you as well. But I just thought this was an interesting symbol right here. This person right here is a Palestinian flying the flag, his Palestinian flag, in their quest to obtain a Palestinian state, and actually to obtain the entire land of Israel for their nation of Palestine. This is their flag. Look at it and notice something about it. What do you see? Look at the colors. White, red, black, and green. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, but these are the 4 colors of the 4 horses of the apocalypse. And you can look at other flags from Islamic nations, and you'll often see these same 4 colors, or you'll see a combination of 3 or 2 of them in their flags as well. But they seem to be attracted to these 4 colors for some reason as the symbol of their faith, of the Islamic faith. And so it's just an interesting coincidence, perhaps, that it also represents the 4 colors of the 4 horses. And I'm sure that for them, a nuclear attack on Tel Aviv will be a dream come true. But it would be an Israeli nightmare. Okay, this is what they would like to do, not only in Tel Aviv, but they would like to do this in many of the cities of Europe, as well as America, and any nation that opposes them, okay, if they ever obtain a nuclear weapon. And so this is what's ahead for us. Okay? And so the question I have is, are we in the times when the seals are being really open? And I have this poster that you might have seen from another lesson I had on the most likely year for the rapture. But that's why I have this seal judgments, and I have these arrows that extend, well, indefinitely into the past, because I believe the seal judgments began even after the first century, and definitely after Muhammad began the religion of Islam. That's why I have these pictures right here. Okay? Are we this close to the rapture? Okay. Well, you're going to have to look at this lesson. I'm not going to discuss that. I've taken enough time. Okay? But look at this lesson to know why I believe this is the time. Okay? And it has nothing to do with dreams. I don't have these dreams or visions. I've taken this out of Scripture on why I chose this year. But part 2 deals with the 6th seal. It is a seal that is totally different from the first 5, okay, as you're going to see. So if you're still interested in learning more and in still learning about what I think the scroll is after the 6th and 7th seal is, what is that scroll, then go on to part 2 and view that one. Thank you again for your patience, for taking the time, and I pray that God would bless you Malama pono. You take care. God bless. Aloha.